well. Super important. Awesome.
Okay, I think I figured it out. So thank you so much for keeping that going while I was troubleshooting here.
No problem.
So yeah, we have this recording. It'll be posted on Slack later this week. Some of our coming up guest speakers, just in 2 days, Wednesday, 11/6, we have Per Borgen, who's going on going from zero to employed. Then nothing next Monday. On 11/18, we have Sydney Shine on designing financial mobile applications. And tonight we have Anqi Zou of Truist, and she'll be talking about data and analytics career opportunities for financial services. A few general reminders: please keep muted unless asking questions, but please ask questions. We love to hear them. You can either use the chat functions or there is a Q&A feature as well. So whichever you prefer. And I will turn it back over to you, Anqi.
Awesome. I was just working on the taking a look, testing out the presentation. It doesn't seem like it'll let me present this in full screen. If this is okay, I'm gonna keep it in this view. And good evening, everyone. Especially, I think all of you are on the East Coast, right? My name is Anqi Zou. So the Q is a CH sound. And I've been with Truist for 5.5 years. I'll go over a little bit about my background in a little bit. Hopefully that resonates with some of you. But for today's session, originally I had planned to talk about different data analytics career opportunity within banking or financial services. Again, while I tell you about my story, I'll share some of the kind of my experience with that in the past. But just in case we don't have enough content in terms of telling you, kind of exactly what an analytics professional does in the banking environment, I did prepare a few examples around quantitative risk management, where I spent vast majority of my career in. But we don't have to go through all the examples if we want to make it a little bit more interactive. I've reserved some time for Q&A at the end, but also I do have the chat pulled up. If you have a question you want to ask it more real time, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring during each of the sections. So this is kind of agenda for today. Just moving on a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Anqi Zou. Been with SunTrust, now Truist, for 5.5 years. I've been in banking my entire career, coming up 11 years. So I went through a little bit more kind of your traditional route of being a data analytics professional, but not necessarily for a financial services or banking professional. I actually came to the U.S. When I was 18 years old for college, and my parents really wanted me to be an accounting major, and I got a C+ in managerial accounting. I realized that this is not for me. And actually, when I first came to the country, I had very limited kind of spoken English proficiency, and I also didn't read nearly as proficiently as I am today. So I do today. So I actually decided to just take a bunch of computer science classes because they didn't require as many reading assignments as your history or philosophy classes. So I ended up kind of locked into a double major in mathematical business and computer science. While evaluating my different options, I did decide to pursue a master's degree in computational science engineering, essentially computer science with specialization in statistics, applied statistics and operations research, which is focusing on optimization problems. Never thought I was going to work for a bank. I don't know how many of you you have banking as part of one of your dream industry, or Truist is your dream company. That's not the case for me. When I was in grad school, really what happened for me was my now husband, then boyfriend, was going back to school in North Carolina, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. That's where I reside today. I wanted to be closer to him, so I took a job with Bank of America in Charlotte. That's what brought me into banking for the first time. And I will tell you a little bit more about kind of different career opportunity within the banking kind of realm in terms of analytics. But what I did is I went through what's called kind of leadership development program, a rotational program focusing on data analytics, and then I was in the asset liability management, balance sheet management space for the first 6 years of my career. But I was so, interested and invested in helping people to go from point A to point B in their career. I was mentoring a lot of students as well as professionals who are on a little bit untraditional path, right? They might want to break into data analytics, or they might want to join the banking industry. So I just wish somebody would pay me to do it. And there was a very unique opportunity. So one of the predecessors for Truist, which was SunTrust Bank, took a chance on me and brought me in to lead what we call the TLC of data analytics, talent, learning, and community. So I came in and I actually get to design and lead my own rotational data science program, an internship program, which was a feeder to it. I managed university partnership, in particular university research, recruiting pipeline, as well as kind of what we call upskilling, reskilling, a workforce development program for existing teammates as we have new, new tools and new frameworks being rolled out. That's part of a change management responsibility that I led. I was in that role for 2.5 years, absolutely had a blast. One of the initiatives I was very proud of was I ran something called the Data Analytics Communities of Practice. Essentially, you hire a data scientist, so what do you do now, right? Especially that was during COVID. We definitely had a lot of, remote engagement. So I ended up rolling out 30 different analytics kind of workshops, just like this one, to our teammates, and including hackathons and executive education. And we also had an annual week-long data analytics summit where 2,000 teammates actually attended virtually, during 2020. So definitely very proud of the work that I did there. But I loved it so much that I experienced burnout, and also I was directly managing over 20 data scientists. So I decided to, proactively look for an opportunity internally, which will allow me to continue grow my skill set, and but at the same time, not actually move to individual contributor role. So I moved to our artificial intelligence center of excellence as a AI innovation leader. So what I did was I was an internal consultant, strategist. I worked with teammates from leaders across different lines of business on ideating possibility for AI machine learning application. I was, one of the co-authors for our very first AI governance policy at Truist Bank. And at the end of that, so I was on that role for about 2 years. I had my daughter just about 2 years ago, and I came back from maternity leave January of 2023. So a lot of things had happened, right? ChatGPT and all of these generative AI application came out. The interest rate, continued to rise, which, from a balance sheet management, that goes back to what I started in banking, 11 years ago, really understanding kind of, how the bank makes money and what kind of economic situation we were in, which had led me to make a strategic career move to move out of the AI Center of Excellence into, kind of your core, your banking and risk management space. So a very unique opportunity came up with our compliance organization. So I'm actually sit in compliance today, and I lead a analytics team that essentially measure fairness and bias quantitatively. That's what I do on a daily basis. So I wanted to share that career journey just to share with you all that whatever you study in school, might lead you down a a seemingly linear path, and then you might deviate from it because of a unique opportunity, or your passion drive you to a particular area. And analytics has always been a very how do I put it, a really core component of my identity. That's why I really had built a career with different areas within banking, from technology, from risk management, compliance, now talent management, but it's all surrounding data analytics. So, I'm working at a organization like Truist. We really have opportunity to move around internally and explore different career path as well. I always spend too much time on my journey, but I wanted to take a pause here to see if any question before we move on to kind of some of my view around your career opportunities and journey within banking and financial services. All right. So how many of you have heard of the concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? Anyone will be willing to come off mute and just share with us some of your experience, understanding there? Tina, I think I saw your thumbs up first. You want to give an example there? Tina Baldwin?
Just being willing to learn new things, not shutting down whenever you come across a obstacle to your learning. Just in seeing failure as an opportunity to learn something new rather than, not being capable of doing whatever it is. Sorry, that's probably not a very good example.
No, that's a great example of a growth mindset. Gwendolyn, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, would it be something like the fixed mindset in terms of work? Is someone who learns a job and they do that job for like the rest of their career, so it's kind of fixed in that. Whereas like the growth mindset is someone who is continually learning something new, similar to what I think Tia said, where you're learning a new job all the time, so you're not really doing the same thing over and over again.
Absolutely. I mean, these are all, there's no set like definition for it. I'm sure if you look, Wikipedia or, on dictionary, there might be a definition, but really, at the core of it, someone with a growth mindset is like, I'm continually improving self. I'm continually learning new things, right? I like to, and failure doesn't mean, that's the end of it, right? And I recently had a conversation during leadership development training that one of the coworkers at Truist said that he never viewed the word challenging or hard as with any negative sentiment. Something challenging or hard means this is, it's a great problem to solve. It's opportunity to lead. It's to lean in and create something that wasn't there before. So it was very interesting, like interpretation what you think of a growth mindset, right? So when it comes to career pathing, and honestly, some of this presentation material has been almost 10 years old. So I've changed up some of the specific tools or skills here and there. But, really how I view career pathing is, in any industry, is that you really got to look at this pyramid, right? You got to start with your growth mindset. I can always learn new things, because depending on the industry, the company, the team you're on, right? Or sometimes you might become the leader and you make the decision about what's needed to take your team from here, from point A to point B. You have to have that skills. You have to have your own skill set, right? So these are things around, problem framing, right? How do you, in the context of analytics, how do you perform data wrangling, data mining? How do you make sure your data model is in the right format for people to perform any analytics? Otherwise, it's just going to be garbage in, garbage out, right? And how do you tell the story through visualization, etc., right? And again, it depends on the team, or like I said, even the use case. You might have to select different tool set, right? a large language model is not going to solve everything for you, right? So a lot of times Excel, where someone mentioned about learning about SQL, it is at the core of data science, data analytics, product management. If you know SQL, SQL really, really well, it's really going to pay off in the long run, and you can implement in many different environments, different languages, right? So that tool set will continue to change. It's funny that I actually pulled this page because this is over 10 years ago when I was in grad school. Everyone talking about the ever-evolving landscape of big data tool set, right? You really got to have some exposure to a subset of these tools to make sure you understand the kind of the data analytics life cycle, from sourcing, storage, and ETL transformation, yada yada, right, and to your execution and visualization. And just as I was preparing for this presentation, I looked online. The 2024 kind of the model data analytics landscape in terms of that same same chart. Like, it is very overwhelming. This there's no expectation that you need to have exposure to even a fraction of of these tools that are listed here. However, it's just to show you how much the industry has evolved in just a decade, how many new tools, right, are coming out, right? So understanding kind of your role in this landscape, right? You can't be a generalist and have a little understanding of everything and become a consultant, or you can really hone in on a particular area and do very well in it as well. There's really no right or wrong way, and that's where I really want to just one of the messages I want to get across today is let's celebrate the diversity of possible career paths within data analytics, whether it's in banking or not, right? So I'm not gonna kind of show this too long. I feel like the longer I stare at this, the dizzier I get. But that is just to say, like, there's it's like when you ask someone, they said, okay, I want to be a doctor. I ask you, okay, what kind? Is a podiatrist is very different from a neurosurgeon, right? You want to be a lawyer, what kind? Do you want a public defender? Do you want to be a litigation? Do you want to work in compliance, in corporate, be a corporate lawyer? Like, all these things are very different. So same for, I want to become a data scientist. I want to become a data analyst. So what kind, right? Really think a little bit about which path you want to go, and that's not linear. You can definitely bounce like back and forth as well. So I wanted to start with this foundation of a growth mindset translating into skill set and manifest as tool set in your specific role and function or use case. Let me take a quick pause here. Any questions, reactions? Yes, you will get a presentation, a copy of this presentation. So actually, that's a good point. I'm not going to read through slide by slide every single point on this. You will have a copy of this. Again, tomorrow this will become obsolete because on some of the material, like I said, I prepared many years ago. I've gone back and refined it. Most of this still pretty current, but even based on what you learned from this program, there are a lot more new applications that's not mentioned in this deck. So really think about, like myself, whether you call me a computer scientist or an analytics professional, or recovering data scientist or whatnot, there's so many different functions within banking and financial services where you can use your analytics skills. I talked a lot about risk management, and that's something I realized for myself. I actually used to be on a team called corporate investments, and I was doing essentially as a software developer doing trading desk support. And that's when I realized I'm not particularly interested in helping the bank make a lot more money. What I'm more invested in is, the talent development piece, or the today, the fairness and bias measurement, and creating more, fair and equal opportunity, and sometimes equitable opportunities for our clients, right? That's where my passion lies. So you can definitely, find different opportunity that's a good fit for your skill set and your passion in the banking and financial services industry as well. So a couple of things I want to mention here. I have a later slide on different risk management area within banking. Just so I'm not going to go through the details here. Financial forecast, regulatory reporting. Many of you have heard that banking is highly regulated, right? So understanding what are some types of a forecast. There's an exercise that we do called stress testing. I have an example later for you as well. These are required by the laws and regulation. There's strong job security and a lot of the kind of industry-wide knowledge can be gained from working in the financial forecast or regulatory reporting space. Business intelligence, reporting, analytics. A lot of people are kind of drawn to the marketing or channel analytics, our customers interacting with us online, mobile, in person, right? What does that journey look like? Where can we identify pinpoints? How can we use visualization to help us, provide a more smooth customer experience, right? These are a lot of very intuitive areas, and there are actually a lot of research, behavioral economics that are used in reporting and marketing as well. Can be a fascinating area for a lot of people. Optimization, like I mentioned earlier, portfolio management, revenue management, credit card, it's a strong revenue stream for a lot of the banks. How do you optimize, credit card approval, so underwriting process, and then what credit limit you issue to the customer to really manage the credit risk is also very important. It's part of kind of the optimization's function. You also have a lot of other kind of what we call advanced analytics today. And there's a lot of kind of technology requirement behind it, in particular around how do we provide real-time response to our customer, right? Whether it's through a chatbot or in fraud, you can't wait 2 months to catch a fraud. It really happens instantly, instantly. So you really got to make sure that your model is responding in real time or near real time. So these are just some different functions. If you learned something on this slide you didn't know before, give me a thumbs up. That'd be great. Okay, continue on. I know some of you had already mentioned you learned so many technical skills, right? When I was in grad school, this isn't all that long ago, 10 years ago, right? There weren't that many, Python was just starting to become popular, and there weren't nearly as many kind of commercial tools like what I showed in the overwhelming slide that was available. So you had to learn, code everything in C++ or, R or MATLAB at the time. But however, today, because there's so many, commercial tools that are available, a lot of what I'm even listed here is becoming less and less relevant, right? So for example, in risk management, even today, like financial services, SAS as a language, it's a statistical, analytics or analysis tool that's just not going anywhere anytime soon, right? Python as an open source tool is becoming a lot more popular. However, the governance and security around it sometimes can be, it depends on what environment you're running in, right? Can become a challenge for a highly regulated industry, right? How do you trust the open source code that somebody else wrote on the internet is better than the one that you wrote, right? It's hard to argue that. Financial forecast, as I mentioned earlier, there's a tool called QRM, the quantitative risk management. It's an industry standard tool that just about all the major banks use. Business intelligence, a lot of visualization tools. Tableau is a very popular one. Power BI is part of the Microsoft suite. Click has a lot kind of customizable function that Tableau might not have. So again, some of you mentioned, CSS, HTML, a lot of that can be also applied to your business intelligence or visualization area as well. Again, this is just to show that depends on what you learn in school, or in this class. Maybe you have a passion project, outside of your classroom, can really help you build a portfolio as you research or interview for any of these jobs within the banking industry. But also, let's not ignore the I don't want to call them soft skills, right? They are power skills, right? Your interpersonal skills, your business acumen, your ethics, right? That's sometimes there's the compliance piece of ethics. Now there's the risk management mindset part of ethics that it's also sometimes harder to learn through a classroom, right? How do you prioritize, right? So in a classroom environment, right? Sometimes you're taking one module at a time. You're finishing one project, and the next one will come next month. You can plan these things. I mean, I think all of you, most of you, if not all of you, also worked elsewhere. You know that sometimes that you can't keep up with the plan. I think 2 weeks ago, something happened at work that has completely changed how I look at priority for the rest of the year. And these things happen, right? How do you make sure you can manage multiple projects, understand the what's expected out of deliverable? How do you compromise, right? It's very important skill as well. And something that's I feel was a little overlooked, and then maybe AI will become a equalizer here, is kind of business writing skills, ability to write technical or research-based paper according to regulatory guideline is very important. For right before I became a talent manager, I was what you call a model developer. So I was essentially a statistician that built mathematical and statistical models for different forecast areas. Most people working kind of as a risk quant want to become model developer, but at least I didn't realize as a model developer, because of the regulatory, the heightened regulatory requirement, that we had to write like model documentation that are 300 pages long, covering all the aspects of how do you pick these variables? Did you build a challenger model for your champion model, right? How do you do the monitoring for these models? And that's something that I wasn't prepared for, and I learned tremendously in the years when I was a model developer. So the last slide in this section is really around some of the career opportunities to consider within banking for data analytics. As I mentioned, I am personally a product of a rotational program. I used to design and lead my own program. I'm a big fan of it. They're usually 12 to 24 months in duration, and they really gave you a different taste of in a rotational manner, right? Different taste of different business areas, and also there are a lot of other training and leadership exposure that go along with it. It's almost an extension of the school, of the training program you're going through. There's a strong sense of cohort. You are learning and growing together with the rest of the folks, right? You also have direct hire opportunity. If you know exactly what you want to do, it doesn't have to be permanent, but right now you can also apply for jobs to directly join a team, right? Usually these are under some of these job titles are listed here. Okay, I see there's a question in the chat. I'm curious to know, since credit unions are not for-profit, how advanced are these practices for them, if at all? They're so limited. Would their fraud protection, for example, be as good as a bank? So credit unions are actually, you're right, they are under a different set of regulatory expectation from us. They're larger banks, like the big four banks that are kind of the globally and systemically important banks. Truist is a super regional bank, and credit unions are subject to a different set. So a lot of time when smaller organizations, what they're taking a higher risk, they find a niche that really kind of balance the risk management portfolio, the risk appetite they have, right? I would say in terms of, I can't just make a blank statement that credit unions don't have as much of a fraud protection, but at the same time, they also are not drawing maybe as much of a, as many fraudsters, right, in terms of threats and attacks and activities, right? So again, I don't want to make a blank statement that credit unions are not as good at fraud detection as bigger banks, but the bigger banks are also by regulations need to have a higher standard, a more sophisticated way to catch fraud, right? And a lot of the major banks actually participate in a few consortiums where you share your fraud information. So you can build out a platform that smaller, credit union, they're called non-participants, right? You have but they can still use the data that are being, collected from bigger major banks. Hope that answers your question. All right. Like I said, I didn't think I have enough material to talk for 45 minutes or an hour on just career opportunities. So I prepared some examples and then overview kind of into different risk management in banking. In particular, like I said, I started in risk management and then I can move out of risk management. Now I'm back in compliance again, which is under the overall risk organization. So I just wanted to, again, introduce to all of you kind of, how do you act as a good risk manager in financial services or banking, or how can analytics help you achieve your goals? So I do have this little activity I want to take just a couple minutes for us to complete, right? So what is risk, and are you a risk taker? So let's take this test. So I got 8 questions here. If you answer A, you get 1 point. Answer C is 3 points. We'll take maybe 3 minutes. We'll have until 6:40 Eastern. For all of you, just go ahead and answer these questions and tally up a little bit and see kind of where you land. And if you're finished, feel free to put your score in the chat. There's really no right or wrong. And then the later slide, I'll explain why that's important. So if you are willing to share, feel free to put your total score in the chat. Alrighty. Thanks to all of you who already put your score in the chat. It is very interesting to see, we're all kind of on the spectrum of, some of us score a little lower, a little higher, and this score is definitely going to change. Like I share with all of you, I'm now a mother of a 2-year-old, and there was a time I probably scored pretty high, like close to 20, and today I'll probably be on the lower end, like many of you, probably in that 10 maybe to 14 range, right? Yeah. So here are just some of the the scores, and again, we're just doing this for fun, right? If you scored in the 14 to 16 range, you were a great, risk manager, right? And there are different, jobs within the company that even within risk management that might be a good fit for you, right? Some of you might score kind of, a little on the nervous Nelly or lower level. Like in compliance, so every bank we have what we call 3 lines of defense. First line is whoever is doing the job. Second line is your risk organization, your compliance partner who's overseeing that. Then you have internal audit as your third line. I'm a daughter of a career internal auditor, so my mother was definitely, if you give her a 5, she'll be there. Sorry, you can't score any lower than 8, but you get what I'm saying. So they're definitely, if you work in audit and work in compliance, your job is to provide effective challenge. It doesn't mean you won't do something personally, but you need to have that risk, averse mindset to challenge others' work, right? And really, the definition of risk is the possibility of something bad that may happen, but it may not, right? And your risk return exposure are usually balanced against potential returns, and there are a lot of sophisticated, tools that help you define what that return look like, right? And your risk and opportunity costs, really, these are what we need to understand in terms of analyzing the trade-off between the cost of a reduction and potential of negative outcome. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe your credit union will have a completely different risk appetite and specialization, as a bank, right? Even the bigger banks themselves, you think about Citibank has a huge credit card portfolio. They have very minimal mortgage. I think their mortgage might even be smaller than Truist, right? And then you have Wells Fargo, who does a ton of a mortgage, so real estate backed lending, but not so much on credit cards. So you really got to understand like where you have to focus on to become known for for that market, right? Again, no right or wrong answer, but we're glad to see some of the risk masters out there. And if I'm going to next time I go to the Six Flag, the amusement park in Georgia, you guys can let me know. Like that's when I get on a roller coaster. These days is the only time I take some risks. Okay, so when we talk about risk in financial terms, it's really defined as the chance, right? The chance could be, probability, right? The opportunity that an outcome of investment's actual gain is going to be different from what's the expected outcome or return. So a lot of people say like managing risk, it doesn't necessarily mean, we're going to avoid all the kind of what we call bad economy these days, right? If you anticipate inflation to go up and you adjust your strategy according to it, right, then you are managing the risk really, really well. The problem is nobody really knows what's going to happen in the market, right? So the uncertainty is the risk may or may not happen. You might have to prepare yourself for a rainy day. You have a ton of cash on hand. You're not investing, right? Just sitting there getting the, 3 basis point deposit rate that's getting paid on that. You're wasting your opportunity for investment, right? However, if you very aggressively invested in the stock market 2 years ago, you might be expecting a loss. And this past year, the stock market's been doing extremely well, right? Some people might also got too cautious because they pulled their money out of the stock market, and then now they're losing money, right? So the challenge is that nobody really knows, and there are a lot of ways that can help you become more sophisticated risk managers. But there are so many different like instruments that financial services company are using, stock being and derivatives being on the riskier side, and then government savings bonds being on the the least risky aspect of the other end of the spectrum. This is just a framework. Again, different organization, different banks might have different risk frameworks, but for Truist, we really define it in terms of a credit, market, liquidity, compliance, operational, technology, reputational, and strategic risks. And then we have a number of activities that we use to make sure we can well manage these risks. Stress testing, again, I'll be saving this for a while. I'll talk about that in the next couple slides. It's just one of the many tools that, internally we can come with different scenarios, right? And the regulators might come up with a different set of scenarios to test us how the bank will perform. And this is as a result of the 2008 financial crisis. So, I'll talk about some of the regulations and the requirements since then. We have governance. That's where I was talking about different your effective challenge with effective challenge from your second line of a risk and compliance partners. You can't just be doing the work. You have to have someone oversee a governance. I say governance as almost as a verb here, right? To check the quality of the work. You have risk appetite. Like I mentioned earlier, again, the credit union, a bank, a small fintech startup have different risk appetite. You might be very aggressive in one area and more conservative in another, and that's all defined within your organization's risk appetite framework or statement. When you see something, say something. How do you, what does that identification, escalation, assessment process look like? There's a lot of kind of risk management and quantitative measures in this area as well. Measurement and monitoring. For me, working in fair banking, that's a lot of what I do is, we perform not just measuring the fairness and bias in just about all of our consumer lending areas. In certain areas in particular where maybe another financial institution has received a consent order, right? The one that many of you might have heard of is the concept of redlining. Redlining is a activity that all banks and just pretty much all lenders perform in terms of either a monthly, quarterly, semi-annually monitoring activity. And then when you actually identify something, has gone wrong, how do you respond to it? That risk response is also part of the framework as well. Again, you can just imagine if you're good with numbers, how can that get plugged into all of these different areas, right? How much automation can you plug into each of these components, even just from a risk management perspective of a financial services company. Not to mention, there are also a lot of emerging risks. The risks they weren't quite there before, right? You have climate change. I think about 2-3 years ago, Truist had our very first kind of climate change risk manager organization that was established, right? And cybersecurity is a big one. Truist, like I mentioned, we've gone through a merger between two, mid-sized banks to become a bigger bank, right? So the risk associated with their legacy IT system, as the landscape continues to evolve, how do you make sure that change management, that knowledge transfer is in place, right? The regulations constantly change. We probably won't have time to get to it, but there's a lot of what I do today, is all very recent, like 6-month-old regulatory guidance that's changing the direction of the work that we do. And the list goes on, right? We have political and geopolitical concerns and that are constantly evolving, right? So goes back to that. This goes back to the growth mindset we were talking about earlier. You have to stay on top of things and continue to learn, as your career continues to evolve. I was terrible at managing time today, so I know we don't have a ton of time. I can go into some of the examples, but maybe I'll just do like a quick 1 minute on each of the slides, and we'll leave some time for Q&A as well. So one of the things I talked about earlier was around stress testing, and this is actually where I started my career, is in this area called CCAR, Comprehensive Capital Analysis Review. This is essentially due after the 2008 financial crisis, right? The regulators came in and said, okay, the doomsday scenario that nobody thought it was going to take place, right, happened. So the banks need to, and we shouldn't have a situations where the banks are too big to fail. So how do we make sure that the banks are having enough money, reserve, cash, right, capital in place to cover the expected loss, right? So on the x-axis here is the potential credit loss, and the y-axis here is the frequency or likelihood of loss, right? So as a bank, we need to manage what is your expected loss, right? You know, you make money somewhere, you lose money somewhere, right? When we issue a credit card, we know some people are not going to pay it off. When we, issue mortgage loans, we know there might be default, right? Might be market crash. So how that's called a CECL, the current expected credit loss. It's going to happen, right? We're expecting that. And then you have CCAR, which is the Comprehensive Capital Analysis and Review. This is where the regulator or our us as banks internally, we will come up with different scenarios to say, okay, if the doomsday scenarios happens, how do we prepare? How would the bank's balance sheet look like? Are we going to be able to cover our losses, right? And then you have here, like, this is a really bad day. A lot of companies have what we call a resolution plan, almost like what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. If the bank needs to go under, what do we do? How do we make sure we still, give our customer what they deserve, right? Before the institution goes away. So these are just different ways that are, a lot of very sophisticated calculation and work and statistical forecasts that go into all these different areas. The bank hires hundreds, if not thousands of people to do this type of work, to make sure that we're in compliance with regulations. Earlier, I talked about, what I do on a daily basis is measure fairness and bias. There are a number of laws and regulations that require a bank to perform fair lending testing and monitoring to make sure we're not discriminating our customer based on a number of a protected basis. And there, in terms of how we actually do it, there are mainly two ways that we measure fairness. One is how we measure group fairness, right? To make sure that the members of all protected groups in the population, that they receive a fair share of benefit outcomes, right? And then the other one is individual fairness, is making sure you have two individuals with very similar credit background, income, etc. Everything's very similar. They're also being treated similarly, regardless of their kind of protected bases here. Again, the slides will be shared later on, so don't worry if you didn't take a screenshot here. But I do want to just bring forward this idea of an LDA. Again, this is what I mentioned in the last 6 months or so has really come to the spotlight, is around a less discriminatory alternative search. Regulators are now asking the banks, okay, you not only have to build models, right, for your underwriting and your pricing activities, you also want to make sure that these models, firstly, you got to measure, are these models and automated processes has potential discriminatory impact on any of the protective bases, right? And if there is, you have to look for potential alternative that might reduce your bias, But also as a bank, that's what's not laid out on this slide is that we have to make money, and we have to provide the right instruments to our customers, right? So how do you find that balance between, kind of between the most sophisticated model, right, that gave you the best fairness and bias treatment versus a reasonable profitability, right? Balance all these things it's been a very interesting journey that we've been on. I know I've gone way over time, so I'm gonna stop here. Here's my kind of contact information, and I'm happy to take a few questions if I have time for that.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A if you want to tackle those.
How do I get there? Okay, let's see. What are some of the things we should have for an analytics portfolio? It all depends on kind of what kind of roles you're interested in. I'm sure during the program itself, you have a lot of project-based, learning activities that can help you tell your story, right? Let's say if you want to, get in fraud analytics, one thing you can do is that you can go on the Kaggle or it's a Kaggle or the CFPB website even. Some of them have like fraud or complaint data set that you can actually download and perform some analysis on it. And that really will, it's in addition to what's required of your coursework, right? That will really help you stand out. Or if you want to learn about marketing, right? You build a marketing, a model or that's an acquisition model or a retention model. You can find a lot of the publicly available data set to help you beef up your portfolio. So that would be my advice there. It really depends on what role you're looking for. I mean, if you want to be a BI, business intelligence developer, then go ahead and build a dashboard and publish somewhere and start a conversation on LinkedIn or whatever forum that you want to use, right? To get people's reaction and iteratively make improvement to it. These are a great way of building out a analytics portfolio. Another thing, one of my favorites is that, maybe there are nonprofit organizations that also, organize hackathons to solve a particular social problem. That would be a really good way of doing, using data science for good. At least where I'm based in Atlanta, we have the Technology Association of Georgia that every year we run multiple hackathons to help combat, mental health, opioid addiction, and a lot of different topics. Are there any texts that I would recommend reading concerning data analytics and certifications? I don't. I say that really because, most of the books out there, if you read any book, it's probably pretty good. And depends on, again, the type of the tool the company is using. The certification might become more relevant than others. Like some company use Google for everything. I see you use Google Meet here. Others use Amazon Web Services, AWS, right? So it really depends. But my philosophy is that if you've taken, if you had an introduction in one particular platform or language, it's pretty easy for you to learn about something else, right? So my best recommendation is that if you've really discovered your interest in a particular area, talk to more people that are doing that job today and ask for their specific recommendation, right? And help you, again, continue to build out a portfolio. Any other questions? I know we're almost at time. All right, it's been a pleasure, getting to know all of you a little bit today. Hopefully, you learned something new. It's a good hour, spent on your Monday evening. And please let me know if you have any additional questions. Like I said, I'll make some slide edits to the slides, and I'll share it back with the organization. Thank you for having me. You're on mute, Emily.
Thank you so much for presenting tonight. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. As a reminder, if you are doing this as part of the tech event requirement, do not forget to fill out the form in your Google Classrooms. That's the way that you will be getting credit for attending tonight. And hopefully you all found it interesting. Again, we have coming up on Wednesday, we have Per Borgen on going from zero to employed. And then on November 18, we have Sydney Shine on designing financial mobile applications. Thank you all and have a great evening. We'll see you next time.
Can I ask you a question
Thank
just
you.
about where you find the recording for these? Is it on the same place as the classroom recordings?
Normally we post them in the announcements channel on Slack.
On Slack. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So it may be a day or two because the people who normally do this are out right now.
Oh, no,
and I'm
hoping
going
for
to have to
Wednesday.
figure it out a little bit at a time.
No worries. I won't be able to make Wednesdays, but it sounded interesting. So that's why I was just curious where I could find the replay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night,
Yes.
everyone.
You too. Thanks.
Slide also we can get from the Slack, the slide.
Yes, when they're shared, we will share it out on Slack along with the copy of the recording.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. Good night. Turn off that recording.